And with me today, I have a special guest in Ray Martin. Welcome to the show, Ray.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you very much, Aaron.
My pleasure. Can you tell people a little bit about yourself and about what you're all about, please?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question to be asked. I've thought a lot about this in the last few weeks. When people say, "What do you do?" and stuff like that, it's quite hard to pinpoint. Where I've got quite a few different things that I'm involved with, but my main professional work is I work as a leadership coach. So I'm really interested and quite passionate about people sort of tapping into their full potential and full power, and certainly I've been in that pursuit for myself for most of my life. Although in recent years it's turned more to wanting to sort of what I would call walk my own true path and find a life that feels true for me. There's a whole story around that as to why that's the case, which I can come back to if you like. But so I'm mainly working as a leadership coach. But one thing I think that stands out in my recent years is that in 2004, I took a 6-month sabbatical from my corporate life and career. I'd founded a business in London and it was very successful. And for personal reasons, I decided to take a break. So I minimalized my life and packed everything away to travel for 6 months as a backpacker around Asia. But it did not go according to plan. A couple of very random and unforeseen events happened. And I ended up living out that backpack for 14 years and I didn't return until much had changed. And the wisdom and knowledge I gained from those experiences, I was asked to document and publish in a book which came out a little while ago called Life Without a Tie. So in the last year and a half or so, as much as I work as a leadership coach, I've been asked quite a lot to speak about what some of the experiences and learnings from that journey. So I do a lot more public speaking and podcasts and things like that these days. So that's a sort of summary. I live in England, by the way, and I'm in my 60s.
That must have been amazing, Ray, to be honest, to do all that traveling and, the life experience you can get from doing that a lot of people miss out on. A lot of people, from my experience, that they stay where they've grown up. They do, the same job. They might go on holidays 2 to 4 weeks a year, and that's about as much exposure as they get to the wider world and the culture and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I would definitely encourage anyone who's got the feeling they want to go out into the world and look, because what's really brilliant these days, as I discovered, is that there's so many ways you can sustain an income while you're traveling. They just didn't exist before. The world of the internet has opened up so many possibilities for people to either run a business on the internet or work remotely or write or manage projects in different locations. It's just a multitude of things. And I actually even made friends with people when I traveled who were writing kind of newsletters to help people like that find work opportunities or come up with creative opportunities of how they could generate money while they were traveling. In fact, even in the independent newspaper today, I think there was an article about people that are traveling and working and earning a living while they're moving, and it's just got published today. So yeah, I just think it's a great thing to do if you feel like that. I know some people who would hate the idea of traveling permanently. For them, happiness is having a house and a family and being at home, and that's exactly what their true life is for them, and that's great. So it's only if you're so inclined, I think it's good.
Yeah, there's value to having both, really, and having security and stuff like that. Yeah. But I think that's why online business is so appealing to people, is having that freedom to choose and that freedom to live life on your own terms, really.
Yeah. Have you done anything like that? Have you traveled and worked at the same time?
When I left school, I spent 18 months in Portugal, where I went there to live and work, but just for a short term, really. And apart from that, during my military days, I've got deployed overseas, but that's a bit more structured but you still get exposed to different cultures and experiences, and it's still really, really good. And I would recommend it for anyone, really.
Yeah, great, superb.
But sorry, go on.
No, that's good. You can. So
I was just going to come back to, so obviously at the beginning when you're introducing, you said about the journey about kind of finding yourself and that kind of thing, and I'm on that journey still. And I just wonder what kind of drove your journey? What pushed you to feel like I need to discover a bit more about myself and about who I am, what I'm all about?
Yeah, I can tell you. I mean, I'd been someone who was interested in personal development for years, and I'd worked in an organization that really strongly advocated and gave physical and financial support to us to do lots of personal development. So that part of me was alive and well, and I sort of drew on that energy to, in my late 30s, to start my own business, because one of my mentors in life had always said to me, if you really want to be wealthy, you're never going to do it on a salary. You've got to really create an organization and lead it and grow it and grow the people in it, and then you've got a good chance of maybe creating some wealth. And I totally bought into that concept. So it's just a matter of time, and I was ready. I met somebody who I fell in love with. We got married, and she had the same vision as me for building this business. So we became a husband and wife management team, and for 10 years it was absolutely brilliant, Aaron. I mean, I felt like I was living the dream. It was absolutely brilliant. We were sort of the business equivalent. I don't know who would be current these days, but I think of people like Torvill and Dean, the ice skaters. This is showing my age now. I don't know who currently is a good pairing, but we were like that in the business world. And until one day she came back from a meeting she'd been to with a client and said, I've decided I'm out of this. I'm leaving you and I'm leaving the company. And it was a real shock. It was sudden. It was heartbreaking. It was like being stabbed in the chest. It was awful. I didn't see it coming. So that caused a lot of self-doubt in me and started making me question, why didn't I see that coming? And what's a part of me had sort of shut down in a way. And at the same time that was going on, my father got very, very ill and he died shortly afterwards. So within a 3 or 4 month period, I'd sort of lost my dad. I was out of my home because I had to move out. My business was going to change, and I was ending a marriage to someone I loved, so it was a shocking time, really. I felt like I was standing in a bomb crater about 100 meters circular around me, and I was just turning around and looking at all the damage in every direction, thinking, and I'm smiling now, but at the time, honestly, I thought life had come to an end. I really thought I couldn't imagine ever being happy again. I really felt that was the end, and I was 43, so it clearly wasn't the end. And that was really the circumstances that I didn't know what to do. I was in a panic. I had no idea. And I was in paralysis for about a year. And then one day, a really good friend of mine gave me a great piece of advice. It was brilliant. She could see I was really distraught. She said, you know what? If you are in a bleak place and you can't see a way out, one of the things you can do is you can put all your own questions and troubles to one side and find someone who really needs help and go and 100% be in service to them and just help them and forget about yourself for a while. And if you do that, there's a fair chance that there'll be a crack in the universe and something will emerge. And that was my best option when I heard that piece of advice. So I followed the advice, and I found out that one of my old friends who I'd shared a house with when I was younger in the UK had emigrated to Australia with her husband, and she had breast cancer. And she was a really good friend. I knew her quite well. And so I offered to go and stay with her for a month in Sydney, Australia, looking after her, pay my own ticket and go out there and do it all so I could be in service to her. And I did that. And of course, at the end of the month where I'd finished, it was exactly the same. Nothing had changed, because my friend who gave me the advice didn't say that there could be a time lag between you doing this act of service and some new insight or revelation. I just assumed it would come instantly, but it didn't. But and tell me if I'm talking too much, by the way, Aaron, I can rabbit on. But about a month later, I went up to Cairns in Australia because I was already over there to see another friend. And she said, we're going to go to the theatre. We're going to go and see a play, my mum and me, and we wondered if you want to come with us. I said, okay. So we got to the theatre, and I'm looking at the programme to see who's in it and what it's about. And I saw this little ad in the programme saying, we're auditioning for the next play at this theatre. It's called Out of Order. It's a British play about a member of parliament. And so I turned to my friends and said, I should be in that. Look, I've got the perfect accent, just right for this. And I thought they would just laugh and that would be it. But they said, actually, That's not a bad suggestion. We know the director who's doing the casting for that play. We know him. Do you want to go to the audition? It's on Sunday. So I said, that's ridiculous. No way. I'm not an actor. No one's going to choose me. I've got no skill or experience. And besides, I've got to fly back to England on the following Tuesday. So even if I got offered a part, I can't do it. They said, well, why don't you just do it for fun? So I said, okay, I will. I'll do it for fun. So I went to this audition, threw myself into it, because I've been learning in life. If you have to do something like that, you got to do it 100% or zero. Otherwise, you're right, falling down the crack in the middle. And so I threw myself in 100%. And lo and behold, the day I got back to London, I got a call from the director saying, we really would like you to be in the play. And I said, what part? Thinking it would just be a really small part. They said, we want you to play the lead role. George Pigden, he's the central character, 400 lines in the script. He's on stage for an hour and a half every night. He's got to do all sorts of antics, like a comedic faux pas type guy. And I thought, wow, I can't believe this. This is just unbelievable. I knew I needed something to change. And here was this change being offered. And I'd arranged to do some coaching work with 4 clients while I was in Australia, and said, I can't do it till I get back. And now I was back. And I booked dates in with all of them, and I'd given my word I would help them. And I'm a person who values integrity very highly. So there's no way I was prepared to go unless I had the blessing of all 4 of those clients. So I called every single one, and I told them the story I'm telling you right now. And I said, I just feel like somehow this is meant to be. It's almost like God wants me to do this, which sounded a stupid thing to say. But that was the best I could describe it. I said, I feel like I'm being called to do this. I feel so if you give me your blessing, I'll do it. But if you want me to stay and help you, I will. And each one of them, every single one of them said, no, go. I would do that if I was you. I'd go. I wouldn't miss it. And so I did. And I acted for 3 months in a play in Australia and made it into the newspapers there. And it did a really great job. And that totally and utterly changed my frame of mind of my life. And when I got back, I decided to sell my house in London and go traveling for a longer period. And that's what led to the journey that I took. It's a long answer. Sorry, Aaron.
No, I love it. I absolutely love that. I love that. And, some of them events, that in isolation on their own, they're traumatic enough. To have all 3 at once, with your business and your marriage and, and grieving your loss, that must be so difficult when they're combined, because it just multiplies everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was a tough period, but also because I was working already as a leadership coach, in a way, there was a little part of me, like what I call the wise part of me, that was saying to myself quietly, this is good that you're experiencing these kinds of things, because when people come to you for support as a coach, you'll be able to have empathy for what they're feeling and what it's really like. It won't be so theoretical. It will be something you can really, really resonate with. And so I could see some genuine value in the experiences I was having. If I looked at it just purely as a learning opportunity and wasn't judging whether it was good or bad or pleasant or unpleasant and things like that, if I just looked at it, this is good learning for life, for me and for everybody, then I kind of felt a bit more okay about it somehow. And I sort of looked at it through that lens sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. I mean, the majority of us, if not all of us, will face some sort of trauma in our life, in different ways. Yeah. And that definitely has a massive impact on who we are as a person. And, how we choose to deal with that and how we choose to come through it is, A, it's a testament to you and who you are. But B, it's, over the long run, taking that positive attitude can really, as it's done for you, transform your life into something, something beautiful, really.
Yeah, I think so. And also one of the things I learned and saw was that if I'm really honest with myself, I mean, at the time, I wasn't joyful about being a CEO of a company I founded. I found a lot of the parts of the actual job of being a CEO quite horrid and unpleasant, and I didn't like it. I enjoyed some parts of it, like the part of meeting and working with clients, but the part of sort of doing financial and legal work, providing accounts, reports, all the what do you call it, compliance side and regulatory side of running a business and having to do hiring and firing and all this sort of stuff. There was many parts to being in that role that I didn't really enjoy. I had to drag myself through it most of the time, and I never really faced up to that feeling that it wasn't kind of quite right, because it was, it was producing lots of profit, and the lifestyle it created was great, and so I was able to numb myself, quite a high standard with comforts and good things to distract myself from that niggling underlying feeling. I felt like I was living someone else's life somehow, and it wasn't the life that I truly should be living. And then when I got into that state with everything collapsing, I had nothing left to lose then. I'd lost it all. My self-image had completely gone. Everyone could see I was not really that successful in my life rather than as a businessman. And I read this book. I don't know if you've ever come across a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. Have you heard of it?
I've never read it, but I have heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, so there's by an Australian hospice nurse called Bronnie Ware. So all she does in her work is talk to people who are in the last days or weeks of their life. And so she says she asks them all the same question, which is, what do you most regret about your life? And they all say the same 5 things, according to her. Always the same. Doesn't matter what they did, whether they were a millionaire or poor or a janitor or a CEO, it doesn't matter. And the number one regret, what do you think it would be that some of them would say?
Not spending enough time with loved ones?
That's actually in there, but it's more like 3 or 4.
So probably working too much.
That's number 2.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Shall I say? I'll tell you. The number one regret, as she expressed it in the book, was, I wished I'd lived my life true to myself and not the life that others expected of me. And I sort of, when I read that, it kind of hit me right smack in the face, because that was the situation I'd got myself into. I'd been living this life. I called me Fulham Man, because I lived in Fulham, which is a very swanky West London suburb. And I had a Fulham lifestyle. And it wasn't really me, but I was Fulham Man. And so when I read that, I thought, oh my God, for me, what does my true life actually look and feel like? I had no idea, to be honest. There, I literally had no idea. So I thought, I need to go on a quest to find out what that looks like. And I use the word quest quite specifically, because do you know, I've heard of a coach called Tony Robbins. He's been around for years. Yeah, most people know of him. If you read one of his books, he says the questions we ask ourselves is what determines our life, because the word is, what is the quest I am on? Quest I on. That's the breakdown of the actual word. And so I thought, what a great quest for me to go on. To answer the question, what does my true life look like and feel like? And that's what made me start traveling, to get answers to that question.
I've done, this will be episode like 26 or 27 or something, right? I've interviewed lawyers, coaches, doctors, all sorts, and everybody comes back to this point about discovering who they are and helping other people discover who they are. And I think it's so big, no matter how you help people or what we do ourselves. I think that there's so much power in it, in finding your true self, because we're all brought up, and I feel like a bit of a broken record because I repeat it all the time now, but we're brought up through school, aren't we? We kind of told to conform, and then we're told, oh, we've got to go work hard, get a job. Nobody ever says go and find a job that you love, that's fun. Everybody says go get a job so you get paid well, so you can buy a house, so you can have a family, settle down, and then maybe when you're 65, probably more like 70, 80 now, you can get a pension and enjoy your last few years on earth. I think that's such a bad way to look at things, and I think we need to start looking at, who are we? Stop conforming, stop fitting in a box, find out who you are, what makes you tick, and go out and try to enjoy life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist or anything like this, but it's come to my notice that the world operates as a system, and systems need to be engineered and made to work a certain way. Otherwise, they don't work. So the education system that we've evolved is to drive people towards the mainstream workforce because companies need employees. And so it's not really a genuine education. It's more of a conditioning to prepare people for being obedient workers or compliant workers. And that's the whole nature of what is taught, is to generate that kind of mindset and behavior. To defer to authority, to believe what you're told, and to not question anything. I mean, I probably sound like a kind of activist, and I don't see myself as one. But from everything I've understood and seen with my own eyes and experience, that's how it seems to me. Because I see kids that are homeschooled or independently learning, and they're completely different in their energy. They've got a very different energy signature, as I would call it. And they've got a very different outlook on life, and they've got much more courage and bravery, and they're very self-determining and autonomous in how they operate. And that's beautiful. I mean, I wish more people in the world were like that, so.
Yeah, same. They're more curious about the world, aren't they?
Yeah,
They'll ask more questions. They don't accept as much, which I think people who go through mainstream schooling are kind of taught, just accept this is it, and it just gets hammered into us. But then it gets hammered into us by parents and everybody, because the people who buy into it and the people who are happy with that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then if you don't fit that box, or you feel like I have for a lot of my life, I feel like something's missing, like I'm not.
Yeah.
Like this ain't right for me.
Yeah.
Like I'm always looking for something else. But I get people like constantly thinking, oh, just get a good job, or you've got a good job, you should just keep doing. And it's not for me. I'm not happy in that way, and that's part of my podcast, and part of my journey, and kind of finding out who I am and just being myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Yeah, I mean, this is a big topic. We could talk about this for absolutely hours, which I'm happy to do.
Yeah, it's just funny to me that people from all different walks of life that I talk to always seems to come back to this, like how important it is for people, and how important it is for the people that they coach and they help to find that first and foremost. Because if they find that, then the rest of the stuff just seems to fall into place a lot easier. I'm not saying there's not work involved, but it just falls into place a lot easier, it seems.
Yeah, I think so, because there's, to me, there's the two realities of life, isn't there? There's the form of life. That's anything physical that you can see and touch, and physical anatomy. And there's the essence of something, which is the felt sense of it, or the feel of it, the experience of it. And I think we obsess in our society when someone says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Your mind is kind of trained to go to a form. So people say, I want to be a fireman or a nurse or a doctor. But that's because that form represents something in the essence for that person, which they're not reflecting on or articulating in words, but it's what they believe most closely matches to the felt sense. So when I'm coaching someone who's trying to create a vision for themselves, I'm not saying, what job do you want? But I'm not saying, what kind of work really gives you the sense of being fulfilled? Like, is it work where you're doing it alone? Is it work when you're in a team? What's your place in a team? And what would your daily experience of life be if you're at your absolute best? Trying to get them to describe what it feels like, because there might be 50 different jobs that actually meet that description. And so in a way, it doesn't I found for myself, I'm only speaking for myself, I don't kind of mind what kind of work I do, as long as it honors my values, and as long as it matches and aligns with what I feel my purpose in being here is, and gives me a sense of doing something I'm both good at and really care deeply about. Because those two things, where Sir Ken Robinson used to describe that as you being in your element, when those two things intersect. And so when I'm working with somebody in a coaching capacity, those are the kinds of things I'm asking them to really reflect on deeply, because it's that internal awareness that gives the insight as to what is a good choice and what isn't a good choice. I don't know how you find it, Aaron, whether that matches to your experience.
Yeah, that's pretty similar to how I see things, really, and how I feel about things. I mean, I've done a lot of different jobs, and the ones that I'm passionate about, or I have some sort of connection to myself, that I feel like A, I'm able and capable to do a good job, and B, what I'm doing matters to me mostly, I suppose, but matters in general. Then my output and my ability to do stuff just is exponential. It just goes through the roof.
Right.
Whereas if I'm not enjoying something, or I feel like this ain't for me, I don't want to be here, then I just fall off a cliff with my productivity, and I'm just not. You just don't buy into it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, isn't it a lovely feeling when the work you're paid to do so doesn't feel like work that you could just do it all day long? You go, I can't believe I'm paid to do this. I love it anyway.
Yeah, I think that's the dream for most people, and I think that it doesn't change, because whatever job you do, or whatever, if you've got your own business, wherever it is, there's always work to be done, and probably work you don't necessarily want to do or wouldn't choose to do. But it's about your attitude towards it. If you're really, if you're looking at the big picture and the final outcome, and you really, you really invested in it, then even that doesn't seem like work. Even the difficult stuff and the chore, the stuff that would be seen as a chore otherwise, you kind of you just push through it, and it's not even a speed bump to you.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think your listeners will want to have some knowledge or insight around? I'm happy to share some of the things I've seen and experienced, but what do you think they would want to know more about?
Well, I've seen, obviously, you talk about stuff like fully owning, everything that happens, and that ownership, that kind of level of responsibility, and taking responsibility for stuff. So I'd be interested in you explaining how you've shaped that mindset yourself, and how other people can do that, because I think taking responsibility is a big step, because we live in a culture where people like to blame. I've done it. I probably still do it now and again, but I try not to. But blame other people or blame other things, and then that way it's not your responsibility. Oh, it's because of this. It's because of that. And you're not taking responsibility for making things better, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back even further to when we're like literally toddlers. I don't know how it is these days. I don't have kids, so I'm not sure. But from what I see from observing families with young children, tiny little toddler might fall over and hit their head on something, and the parents will say, "Oh, nasty table," or something like that. And so the mindset that it's not your creation is coming very, very early. And even when I was a very young kid, I could hear my parents talking about stuff. They'd say, "Oh, the bloody government, that's because it's their fault that's happening." There was whatever was going on, whether it was in the local community or in the country or the world, there was always someone at fault or to blame. There was never any sort of sense that, the way that you as an individual were behaving was somehow a causal factor in what was being spoken about. And, if we take that down to the level of individual, as it's easy for someone to just turn up for a meeting 5 minutes late and go, "Oh, I'm really sorry I'm late. I overran in the last meeting," as if that's like okay. Because what they're not saying is, I didn't work out how much time I needed to get to this meeting on time, and neither did I keep my eye on my own timekeeping, and I just lost all my awareness of that, and I didn't think this was that important, so I'm here and now. Because that's more like if they were talking from a place of owning it, that's the sort of truth that might be saying.
It's a difficult concept for some people to get hold of. I don't know if you've ever read Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink.
I haven't. No, tell me more.
He's. I don't know if you've seen any of his stuff on the internet either.
No.
It's like podcast. He's quite direct and a bit almost extreme with some of the stuff that he says and does. But he's an ex-Navy SEAL, and Extreme Ownership is all about taking responsibility for everything in your life.
Okay, I'm going to make a note of that. Yeah,
no worries. It's a very, very powerful book, and it's so important.
What was the big takeaway for you when you read that book?
There's so many, to be honest, but what he does is in the book he explains each concept about ownership and how you take ownership when you it's a book about leadership, so it's about delegation, it's about responsibility, it's about lots of different elements of leadership. And what he does is he explains the theory, then he gives a example, because they work as part of his company called Echelon Front. They work with commercial companies. So within that is examples of what they've done with commercial companies, how it works, and then how that works within the Navy SEALs from his experience in the Navy SEALs. And it's all real stories, and it's really, really powerful about, you know, how people, even at the highest level, struggle to take responsibility for things. And the power that it gives you when you do, you know, the fact that when you take, especially if you're in a leadership position, if you're willing to step up and take responsibility for people, not necessarily for people, but for your role in whatever it is that's happening, the trust that builds, you know, in yourself, when you start taking that responsibility on, you will then be a bit more conscious when you're doing stuff as well yourself.
Yeah.
So in future, because you'll stop projecting or blaming or saying so and so isn't good
Yeah.
enough, so and so is not good enough, and there may be lots of different mistakes along the way by lots of different people, but
Yeah.
you can always, there's always a way to own it and own your part in it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, history gives us thousands and thousands of examples, doesn't it, where people have committed crimes against humanity and then said, well, I was just doing what I was told. I was following orders. You know, I had no choice. Of course they did. But the choices they faced were really unpleasant ones. Not to say taking ownership is a, you know, bunch of roses all the time. Sometimes when you take ownership, you're caught with some difficult and unpleasant choices to face.
Yeah, well, one of the key stories that he does say in it is about his time when he was a commander in Iraq, and they had what's called a blue on blue incident, where there's been shooting at your own side, essentially, where, you know, things have gone wrong, positions have been messed up, and people are shooting at their own people, and there's usually a bit of an inquest into that. So, you know, the senior leadership come out and do a bit of an inquest, and they wanted to know. And he's talking about it. They wanted to know whose fault it is, whose fault it's going to be, because it's a blame culture. It seems to be the way, especially in the Western world, there's very much a blame culture. Something's gone wrong. I want to know who to blame, who to point the fingers at. So he sat everybody down in the briefing, started going through it. And he's asking who's himself, who's going through it, asking whose fault is it, and then lots of different SEALs stood up and said, it's my fault because I did this, or it's my fault because I did that. And he was like, absolutely not. It's my fault because I was in charge of the whole thing. And I didn't make sure this was done. I didn't do this. I didn't communicate clear enough about this part of the job. And there's always, you know, you can always take responsibility.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's absolutely true. And I think that's why people have got such huge contempt for our political leaders, because they obviously do the opposite. They can't ever acknowledge that they screwed something up. You know, or they didn't do it right, or they didn't do it very well. They obviously can't afford to even say that publicly.
That just affects trust, though, doesn't it? Because, you know, we all know nobody's perfect. And I would much rather somebody go, oh, yeah, you know what? I messed that up. No matter how bad it is, I messed that up. I could have done this, could have done that. And I didn't. But, like, move forward from it.
It's true. But you see, I think it's mostly because politicians operate to an agenda for the public that is not their real agenda. And that's why they can't acknowledge when they screw something up, because what they're doing is operating to their own agenda, which is entirely different to the one they publicly speak about. So I think that's they're caught between, the two worlds of unreality there.
Yeah, it becomes a bit of a minefield, doesn't it? With politics, I suppose.
It does.
What's going on?
Yeah, it really does. They, in a way, they have to lie if they're going to keep to their own agenda. So.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, but yeah, that taking responsibility is massive and crucial, and something that I constantly work on. And again, I wouldn't say I'm perfect at it. And you know, a lot of the time, you still get that tendency. First tendency is to try and blame someone, like
or defend yourself, or say
because I suppose that's why you're doing it, really, to take some of the heat off you. You blame someone, or you blame something that's gone wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that is, for whatever reason, like I say, it might be a learned thing through childhood. Maybe it's just natural human behavior to try and, like a self-preservation thing almost.
No, I get you.
But it's natural to jump to blame, and we have to work on it. And I actively have to work on it, and I do work on it. Is just taking that responsibility and just putting the hand up and going, nah, I've messed up here because I've done X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get you.
Or sometimes I haven't done something. That's, the other flip side.
And also, I because I experience this sometimes in my relationship with my partner, that I get feedback about something I've done or said, which was not my intention, but it's come across in a way that's landed negatively for her. And of course, I find it quite hard to go home. I'm just really sorry to hear that, because my intention was something different. I'm just really sorry to hear it landed on you in that way. I'm more likely to sort of want to, like you say, no, I didn't say it. I didn't mean that. No, you're wrong. I mean it like this. So it is like, does require, like, that's why I think mindfulness practice is so vitally important, because without that, I think I wouldn't have the mindful awareness to, in those moments, to just pause, take a breath, think about what I'm actually trying to accomplish in that conversation, and actually take that position up. I think I would go into the fight or flight reactive mode.
See, that's one of the other interesting things that comes up in that book, actually, Extreme Ownership, that you just reminded me now, is detachment. So detaching from the situation, so you're not, not emotional, you're not driven by ego, and you can actually take stock and have actual look at what's going on here. And
I call it looking at
pragmatic.
I call that habit looking at the raw facts. So you can just assess, and they're taught that in the military, aren't they? You just assess, orientate, decide, act. This very kind of like machine-like in a way. But
they try to make it, repetitive, that you can repeat it. It's kind of a cycle that you do. But that level of detachment, it definitely does help, because if you're emotional about something, or you're driven by your ego, you're not going to make sound logical decisions.
But we know scientifically that what we're feeling, which is that unreliable determinant, is driven by our thinking. And so we have to really come back to noticing that we are the thinker, not the actual thoughts, that the thoughts can be changed and modified, because this is one of the things I wrote about in my 6 rules for happiness, like becoming your own observer. That is a crucial piece of awareness, because if you don't believe you are capable of stepping into the observer role of yourself, you've got no separation from what you think. You can't take that decision.
I love that, Ray. Have you heard of non-duality? Is that
exactly.
Is that where you're getting it from? Because that's something that's helped me massively over my life, and that ability to realize that actually, if I'm aware of these thoughts that I'm having in my head, then I'm not these thoughts, because I'm the thing that's aware of them. But
that's right.
It's difficult. It's a difficult concept for some people to grasp, and I've probably not explained it to people very well in the past.
Because I think that's one of the reasons I love doing the play in Australia, when I was telling you about that earlier, because after I came home, having played this guy called George Pigden, a character, for 3 months, and to play that character, I had to wear certain clothes that I was given. I had to have a certain voice, which wasn't my voice. George had a very high, silly voice like this that I had to use when I was performing as him. So it wasn't my voice. But what I realized, that living in a character for 3 months, it suddenly made me see myself in a very different way. I've never seen it before, because I was thinking, when I was on the plane going home to England, I was thinking, God, I'm not looking forward to going back to being Ray the businessman. It's a completely different feel to this life I've just left. And then I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, Ray the businessman's a character. I've created him. He wears certain clothes, he walks a certain way, he talks a certain way, he thinks a certain way. He doesn't have to think that way. Because coming back to Tony Robbins in his book, he says, you're not just the actor in your scenario, you're the actor, and you're the script writer, and you're the director. And you can change your life from any of those 3 places. And if you're changing the script and you're writing a new storyline, then the actor needs different lines to speak, because obviously the impact of the scene is different. And so that gave me a lot of really, really good options and choices that I didn't have when I left. Just seeing it from those 3 places. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. And, I think the issue we have is we play this character for such a long period of time.
Yeah, you start believing it.
Yeah, the one that tries to fit in through society and through school and through wherever groups that we may be in. We kind of mold ourselves and that character to that. But we played it. I mean, if you played it for 30 years or whatever, then it's really difficult to change. And you think, oh, that's who I am. But actually, you could choose at the drop of a hat actually to behave in a different way, or to think about different stuff, or to talk in a different way if you wanted to. And if you do it long enough, you'll become ingrained, and that's how you will talk.
Yeah. As long as you're willing to feel whatever comes with that decision, because I find, I don't know how it is for you, Aaron, I find if I start behaving in a quite a dramatically different way to what I'm used to, that's not habit, that's new, I feel quite weird. I feel kind of a bit disoriented, a bit like I don't recognize myself at the moment. There's this sort of transition period where I have to do it 4, 5, 6 times before it starts to feel kind of natural. And that's, I think, the nature of these things. We forget that. So that's something to be taken into account. You've got to be willing to sort of be okay to live in that discomfort for a short period as you make the changes, because it may not feel right the first time.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because we've created this character already that we've already got, and we've presented that character to the world, to everybody around us, to our family, to our friends, and
that's right.
At work. And I think, by doing that, it makes it so much more difficult to then, be like, well, actually, that's not who I am. This is who I am, and to break out of that. And I think that's part of probably that doubt in your head, thinking, I'm not being myself. I'm not fitting in anymore. That kind of thought and doubt that can seed in your mind, really.
Yeah, well, that's coming back to, we were talking about this earlier, the form and the essence, or we could change the words to say form and formless, because who you are is formless. You inhabit a physical body, but that's not you, because we know this. How do we know this? Because if I said to you, Aaron, I'm going to chop your left arm off, are you still you after the arm's gone? Of course you'll say, yeah, I am. You are still you. And if I took your right arm off, are you still you? And you could carry on removing parts of your physical form, and you're still you. So we know you're not your body, and we know you're not your thoughts, and we know we're not, our possessions and our job and anything we can put around a physical form. We can see we're not those things. We're formless.
Yeah, I think people struggle. From my experience, the people I've talked to and the people I try to help with, separate themselves from their thoughts is the most difficult one for them to grasp.
It is.
The physical body, because it's relatively easy to explain, but that inner monologue in your head and the thoughts that you're aware of all the time, people really struggle to see how that's not them, if you know what I mean. And I get it. I get the difficulty with it, but if that's who you are, then who's listening to the thoughts? I don't.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's very difficult unless you have some kind of meditative practice, because that is what builds the mindfulness muscles, is the willingness to sit and let everything become very still and quiet, so that you can tap into that voice that's very quiet, the inner voice of wisdom, I call it. It's very difficult to get a connection with that voice that is the balancing voice, because in Jack Pransky's book, What They Should Have Told Us, which is a brilliant book, I recommend that to anyone who's on this journey, he talks about your habit voice and your wisdom voice, and they're very different in their nature, and they speak in a very different way to you. So I think you've got to do some training of your mind somehow, however that looks for you. You've got to do some training of your mind to quieten it down sometimes, because the mind's very busy and active, and it's there to. Main purpose of the mind is to keep you surviving as you are. To keep your ego and image intact. It's its main function, is to sort of avoid any changes that are going to cause any discomfort for you. So it's got a safety net around you.
Yeah, it's predominantly survival, isn't it?
Exactly.
Part of that innate need for survival is to fit in with groups, because these groups can help me. That's how we've become, and evolved. These groups can help me survive. Help me with food, help me with that kind of thing. Or
something even softer, like I won't get the love or affection or attention I need to survive, or I won't get the support I need to survive, the recognition I need to survive. Food is one thing, of course, but I think in the real modern world, it's more those subtler things that we really need. Because most people can get food. I know not everyone, but most people can.
Yeah. I'm just talking more on,
Yeah.
on a kind of a primitive level, I guess, how the brain is developed, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. We also need them other things and that connection, and
And it's what Robbins calls our driving forces. I think the those things that play in our lives that sit behind our thinking, but are driving and shaping our behaviour.
Yeah, and a lot of it is tied into relationships and connection, because we are very social animals, aren't we? And I find if I spend a lot of time isolated, then it affects my mood, and makes me feel really low and stuff like that.
Right.
So,
Right.
and I've had that. I've seen other people with that same level of experience. I'm not on about going out partying or anything like that all the time, but just having some form of connection, even if it's going to work and having some sort of form of interaction. It really actually
Yes.
helps boost our mood in general.
Yeah, definitely. I have the same experience as you on that.
Yeah, so I'm quite interested in the non-duality stuff, actually. And do you follow anybody in particular with that kind of stuff, or is it just follow your own practices?
Yeah, I suppose the teacher that has had the greatest influence on me, and he died a couple of years ago, but his work lives on, is a monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, a Zen Buddhist monk. And I had the great fortune to attend the very last real in-person retreat that he gave in France in 2014. It was a 3-week retreat where we were with him. And his whole life was dedicated to guiding people towards a state of loving kindness and being at peace in themselves and at peace with their families and at peace with the world. And he had a whole bunch of super duper easy to apply mindfulness practices that brought you to that place. And he taught those non-stop. He was 95 when he died. I think he spent every day of his life speaking about those kinds of practices and teaching all of the nuns and the monks in his community to go out into the world and spread that message. Beautiful man, Thich Nhat Hanh. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of some examples. Like, he would describe, for example, speaking to someone is like, if you're a team manager or a leader, he would describe speaking to someone as like putting water on their seed. Like if you spoke in a kind way, it would be like watering their seed so they would grow and bloom. And he just used fantastically simple metaphors about everything. And, it's very easy for me to take on board a lot of the thinking that he was promoting.
Yeah, I'll have to have a look at that. I've listened a lot to someone called Muji.
Oh, Muji's great. Yeah, I like him too.
I don't know. It's just something really soothing about him as well. The way he speaks and how he slows everything down, and that kind of actually helps me to kind of slow everything down and then get back into that.
I like him too. Yeah, he's got that lovely Jamaican lilt in his voice, doesn't he? And another guy I think is absolutely superb, and my partner really loves him. Is Michael Singer. He wrote probably one of the best books I've ever read. I've read it about 4 times, called The Untethered Soul. And his whole teaching is about living in surrender, he calls it. And this is what you've been talking about tonight. How do you surrender your own ego and your own needs in order to actually just be fully present and aware without any judging, without any story, just the ability to respond to what's actually happening right in front of you from a place of being in the seat of conscious awareness. And he tells brilliant stories, and his teaching's very, very simple. And he's got great videos on YouTube, and I bought a couple of his video series to watch. Michael Singer, definitely would recommend him. Top 3.
I'll definitely check that out, because that sounds really good.
Yeah.
And I think it's just that finding that peace, isn't it? In yourself. If you find that peace in yourself, you're able to then,
yeah, indeed,
just navigate the world in such a better way, and for want of a better word, from a nicer place, from a place of love, really.
Yes.
And it's something that I don't know about yourself, but I think from what you was telling me is the same for you, that you do need these reminders, and you do need to get, because otherwise it's so easy to get lost in the character again. And then you just need these times to just bring yourself back and just, a couple of breaths and just realize that, again, I'm getting lost in my thoughts and my emotions, and it's not necessarily who I am, and I need to bring myself back in.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. For me, we're all trying to work out how to live the best life we can, I think. And I think one of the most vital things, certainly in the next decade, given the way the world is shaping up and all the complexities that we face, the one thing that I think is more important than anything else is this ability to self-reflect on everything that's going on and getting a kind of dashboard and map of what's going on inside of oneself. Because all of the corrections and adjustments have to be made on the inside. There's nothing you can change on the outside that will actually give you that peace. Nothing. It's like Michael Neal in his book, he wrote a book called The Inside Out Revolution. He said, because most of us, when we're growing up and we're conditioned by society, we're living an outside-in existence. In other words, something happens outside, we don't like it, so we make ourselves unhappy on the inside because of the outside event. So that's an outside-in. Something happens on the outside we think is brilliant. We're suddenly happy for a while. And so it's still outside in, but now it's a good version of that. But it's much better that you say, I'm happy. No matter what happens outside, I'm happy. And I'm choosing that. So something bad could happen, something good can happen. It doesn't blip you on your monitor because you're choosing happiness from the inside and you're radiating it out. And so everything that's going to happen is okay if you're in that happy place.
Yeah, it's about controlling ourselves and our reaction in it, because that's the only thing we do have any sort of influence or control over. I think we grow up and develop in this world where everybody's trying to control everything. Everything, and we're chasing control, and it's world is naturally chaotic, so it's you'll always be chasing your tail. So I think until you can find that piece internally and that level of control over how you respond and react to things, I think you'll always be unhappy, really, because you're always chasing that something external.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's definitely what I've committed my own life to, is to support people who are moving in that direction, and to support myself to do that too.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people is like chasing happiness, and I think where are you going with it? Because and this is why people say money doesn't make you happy, really.
Yes.
It can take some pressure off your life, don't get me wrong, and make you comfortable financially, not have that stress or worry, but it's not going to make you a happy person. You still have the same inner monologue running, you're still chasing something, that never stops.
Yeah, I think I've seen this meme on Facebook and LinkedIn and other social media posts where someone says, I want happiness. And you say the first thing is you take away the I, because that's the conditioned self who's asking for that. And you take away the want, because that's the clinging and kind of the need to fulfill something from the outside. And you're just left with happiness. You take the I want out of the picture. Happiness is what's left. It's because the thing is, it's come to my understanding, how it seems to me now, I've studied and read so much and experienced so many things, is that happiness is our actual default innate state. It's our baseline. We're all actually already happy on the inside. We've overlaid that happiness with layers of thinking that gives us the sense that something's not quite right. But if we take off those overlays and return to our default setting, which I mean by default setting, you look at kids that are very young and how they play and act with each other. They haven't got all the thinking that adults have. So they are operating out of their default setting, which is a sense of joy, wonder. They're laughing, smiling most of the time. Obviously, they can change in a moment if they need the toilet or need food or anything like that. Of course, that's how they signal. But their underlying default setting is happiness, is a state of well-being. It's innate. All human beings have that as an innate state. It's built in, hardwired. You don't even need to do anything. It's just in there. But what covers that up is everything that we've layered on the top. So to me, the work of becoming self-aware is removing layers of unhelpful thinking rather than having to acquire any new knowledge. And that's a big, that's a big advantage for anyone on that path to know that.
Yeah, that's well put, Ray, actually, because the way I look at it is very, very similar in that actually we get our thoughts, because I'm terrible for it myself, lots of negative self-talk, or, we have all these negative inputs, or we try to chase this and do that and control this. But actually, what we're trying to achieve is if we create, because happiness is a feeling, really.
Yeah.
So, we'll have lots of different feelings, negative and positive. But what we need to try and do is create space for that feeling. So declutter, like you say, get rid of all the constant noise and input, and allow a bit of peace, a bit of calm for you to then experience and have happiness, really.
Yeah, which is already innate, built in. So it's kind of like, one of my friends calls it going home. It's like when you get back to your center and that default innate happiness, you've returned to your real home, which is that peace inside yourself.
I love that. How do you use obviously all this information and knowledge that you've gained and wisdom you've gained over, your journeys and over your life to help empower other people to kind of take on this kind of approach?
Yeah, so I do my best to use it to keep my own life on track in a way. But of course, in the 6 rules of happiness, which I wrote about in my book, the 6th rule is you've got to do all the first 5, but the most important is the 6th rule, which is you must use this understanding to empower others. You cannot be deeply fulfilled and happy if you're not, at least in some way or some part of your life, empowering others to be their best selves. It's just how human beings are wired. We're connection machines. And so that's, for me, that's why I choose the field of coaching as my work, because I've had the really great sort of good fortune, I suppose, of acquiring quite a lot of experiences and knowledge and wisdom. And of course, I like to use it to be happy myself. But the most joy I get is to share that knowledge and information with people and support them to apply it in a way that makes their lives, for themselves, their families, their teams, their communities, their country, that on all those levels has the potential to really improve their quality of life and their sense of who they are. That just gives me deep, deep, deep joy. I mean, I really do get a really big kick out of doing that. So I love doing that. That's how I do it.
That's brilliant. What is your coaching like, Ray? Is it sort of online? Do you do kind of in-person stuff, or?
In person a lot less these days. I mean, it used to be only in person, but I remember when I was traveling in 2010, 11, I had this fantasy at the time, which is, oh God, I wished I could do more coaching on Skype and online, because virtual wasn't a thing back then. And then I found a company in Singapore that was offering a coaching service to companies across Asia, multinational companies, but they were doing it virtually using Skype. And I became one of their coaches, and it was brilliant. So I started coaching virtually then. But these days it's a mixture. It's a mixture of virtual, some of it, and depending on the physical location, if it's easy to arrange and we can be in a face-to-face location, I still feel personally, I'm a bit of an old-fashioned guy, so I still feel that personal connection is worth the effort. The energy of being with someone in their real presence is much more fulfilling than virtual, I think. But virtual works okay for some people, and it works okay for me most of the time. Yeah.
I suppose it makes it more accessible for people as well, especially if they busy with work and
cuts time and
travel, etc.
Yeah, it reduces the cost and makes time more productive. And everyone's so busy. And we got the pandemic sort of re-envisioned, didn't it, remote working to quite a large degree. It normalized virtual working in a way that we never sort of accepted it before.
It did, and it's also sped up the technology. I think it's forced an acceleration in the technology to get to the point where it's much more accessible for people, and lots more people have it, and it's just made it a bit smoother, that transition, really.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at the two of us right now. This works quite well virtually. We've never met before, and now I'm in your studio and we're recording this, and you've got all the gear that you need right at your fingertips. I don't know. This would probably be a nightmare to set up if we had to meet in a physical room that wasn't a place that either of us owned or used.
Yeah, it's brilliant, to be fair, because I've got a podcast guest booked every day now until the end of November.
Oh wow!
There's no way I'd be able to do that if I was in a live studio and
Right.
execute it, because some of these people as well are all over the world. So
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
all travel and all the other issues, and I've met some fantastic people that I'd never would have met otherwise. So
yeah, brilliant.
I can't say enough about how good the virtual stuff has really been for me, especially.
Yeah, super.
So how do people get hold of you, Ray, if they want to find out more or do a bit of coaching with you?
Yeah, I mean, so my suggestion, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm publishing on LinkedIn every day. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I'm there. But if people want to find out more about me and the journey I've referred to quite a few times in the conversation, I published a book called Life Without a Tie. That's it there. That's what it looks like. It's on Amazon and it's on most book platforms, but Life Without a Tie has its own website, lifewithoutatie.com. So people can go to that website, and there's a lot of pictures from those 14 years there, because when the book got published and a lot of people were reading it and putting reviews up, they all said, "Oh, is there any chance we could see some of the pictures from your journey throughout that period? We've read the stories, but we'd really like to see some visuals." So we created this website with some pictures so that people could actually really see what it actually looked like. So that's a good start.
That's probably quite interesting for people to see as well, isn't it? That pictures from all around the world, all these different things that you've done, and just gives a bit of context to it as well, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because I did quite a lot of weird things there. I mean, I at one point started a fundraising foundation and started running marathons when I was nearly 50. I ran 5 marathons, raised about $50,000 for an orphanage in Nepal and an elephant sanctuary in Thailand, and that was a massive project on its own, just doing that. And I had several different things going on like that during that period.
That's incredible, to be fair. Marathons, I don't know if I managed a half marathon. I don't think I can do much more than that, to be honest. It's a bit of a slog, that.
Yes, it does. A health warning. It does require quite a big commitment to training to be able to do a marathon, and I say that as a man who did it in his 50s. Obviously it's probably a bit easier if you're younger, but certainly anyone can do it as long as they're prepared to do all of the training. That's the caveat.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a lot of time and a lot of hours spent on the road.
Yeah, but I definitely know it's doable because I've done it. So it is possible. I'm happy to help anyone who's got that ambition to, as a non-athlete coach, I can tell them what to do.
Yeah, I've got a friend who's signed up to do one in Leeds, actually.
And, great.
I don't think he thinks it's great right now. So he's only just started training, and I think he's regretting it.
Yeah, I quite fancy doing the Great North Run, which is up in the north. It's a half marathon, but it's quite.
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times.
Is it good?
Yeah, really good. The atmosphere is really good. The route's not too hilly. There's a couple of hills, but it's not too hilly. It's really, really enjoyable because the route is just lined the entire way. So it's one of them good ones. It's probably the closest thing you'll get to the London Marathon.
Yeah, I fancy that.
Atmosphere-wise, in a half marathon.
Indeed. I'll find a way of getting into the next one.
Yeah, I managed 3. I never fancy doing a full one. Maybe I will eventually, but I've done 2 of the Great North Run, and I did one in Lisbon. I did a half marathon in Lisbon.
Oh, brilliant!
And that was lovely. That was lovely.
What would tip you over the edge and make you go for it?
Time, really. Time. Once maybe when my kids are a bit older and I've got a bit more free time, then I'll probably happily do it. But no, I still exercise and train and stuff. But it's an hour at the gym. I can't be out running for 2-3 hours every weekend.
I got you. Yeah, I hear you.
But I might give it a whirl. But yeah, it's been really, really brilliant having you on the show, Ray. do you want to leave us? Have you got any final thoughts for people, or anything you want to leave us with? Final messages?
Oh, let me just give that a moment to reflect on. I mean, it's just lovely to know that people like you, Aaron, are in the world, having conversations like this, creating awareness and understanding that everyone can really benefit from. So I'm really just happy to have been part of your own journey with this podcast and contributing in the best way that I can. But yeah, my encouragement to anyone is always to stay true to yourself, and no matter what the price that might cost you, it's definitely worth it, in my experience.
Absolutely, and that's the kind of journey that I'm on. And having great people like you on the show, who've got all this wisdom, who are ahead of me in the journey, really helps me, and hopefully it helps other people who are listening, and keen to kind of find that level of peace and happiness in their life as well.
Right.
Sorry.
I was going to say, glad to have been here.
It's been my pleasure, honestly, and I'll make sure I put in the show notes. I'll put all the links and stuff, so it's easy for people to find you and get in touch with you.
Great, Aaron. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being on, Ray.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
Ciao.